What's good? What's good? I'm back. Yours truly, one and only Paul Pickett, host of the Paul Pickett Podcast, aka Triple P, aka the Common Sense Podcast, your source for music, sports, politics, world events, and much, much more. Don't forget the videos pre-recorded and will be uploaded to YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Rumble, BitChute, Twitter, and Twitch. For the video version and audio version goes to Spotify, Apple, Amazon, Deezer, TuneIn, Stitcher, Slacker, iHeartRadio, Player FM, and much, much more. I'm going to react to his video. Jen Psaki claims GOP recruiting Muslims and convincing them to attack trans people, which is complete horseshit. Because I predicted beforehand that when Christians started pushing back on this transgenderism and liberals and transgenders started attacking the Christianity, and they started trying to indoctrinate kids in school with transgenderism, that Muslims will push back even harder. And this is another common sense topic here, because Jen Psaki, I don't care what argument she's going to give, I guarantee it's going to be zero common sense. But before we get into that, I want to play another advertisement from Dizzle brand premium luxury liqueur. Let's get into it.
Me and my team, whenever we link up, they wanna be drink up. We sit down, relax and have few glasses when there's things to think about. Like I'm nice with the boss when I tend to the bars and I'm not talking drink ups. So tell the bartender that tend to the bar to please pass me a big cup up. And tell that waitress that's waiting on us to put a little ice in it. Now watch the ice become weightless like the spaceships that I be sitting in. Now wait and listen, they're waiting for that tropical twist that'll take your taste buds. Now taste some. Yo, I insist it's the Dizzle.
I really mean it. Dizzle is a premium luxury liqueur mixed with agave, tequila, cognac, and orange liquor mango mix. Just throw your Dizzle on ice, and it's nice. If you want to order your very own bottle or bottles of Dizzle premium luxury liqueur, go to dizzlebrand.com, click on our locations, click on one of the top 3 website links. I recommend Emilio's Beverage. Must be 21 and over. Shipping and handling is included. Below that is locations in Arkansas, Kansas, Oklahoma, and California as well, plus the Dizzle brand merch. Go to dizzlebrand.com, click on merchandise store, or go to etsy.com, etsy.com/shop/Dizzle brand. It's etsy.com/shop/Dizzle brand, or you can just search for Dizzle brand on etsy.com. Yeah, and don't forget, we got the Dizzle brand gummies officially about to launch the 15th. Go to Dizzle Nova, DizzleNova.com. That's, I repeat, DizzleNova.com. I don't know why this video was actually looping like it did. All right, we're gonna get into it.
Psaki and her show on MSNBC, that as time moves on, less and less and less people are watching. Okay, her show is falling off a cliff, so she's getting desperate in drumming up conspiracy theories about
Complete
the
bullshit.
GOP trying to recruit Muslims to attack trans people. Yes, this is what they are pushing on MSNBC. Okay, they're peddling this type of nonsense. And once again, we have Democrats openly admitting out loud what they think about minorities who are not white. Okay, they think that you do not have the ability to think for yourself, that you're being tricked, you're being brainwashed into certain beliefs. When clearly in this situation,
clearly, that's the whole premise of this, and whole narrative of this video, is that Jen Psaki is acting like Muslims can't think for themselves, that Muslims aren't some of the most free-thinking people on the planet. Jen Psaki, I question, it's one of two things. This is her just trying to push a false narrative, or she's dumber than a bag of bricks and she has no common sense and common knowledge whatsoever about Muslim people or people in general. Let's keep it moving.
Right here, when we have Muslims and the issue of transgender people, whatever, that's not the case, right?
No,
It's clearly
it's
not the case. But hey, Jen Psaki wants you to think that Muslims are being recruited by the white supremacists.
They don't need to be. They don't need to be.
Without further ado, let's go ahead and react to this, because this is extremely silly.
So lately I've been noticing the reemergence of a very old GOP playbook that harkens back to President Richard Nixon's infamous Southern strategy. During his campaign for president in 1968, the Republican Party made a concerted effort to reach white Southerners who used to vote for Democrats by playing to their fears of African Americans and the civil rights movement. And it worked. By pitting one group of Americans against another, the GOP successfully managed to split off Southern whites from the Democratic Party.
You know what's funny about that, right? It's very debatable whether or not that worked, because the GOP did not win a majority of the congressional seats in the South until the late 1980s/1990s. You also had Republican presidents like Dwight D. Eisenhower. Even after he supported the Civil Rights Act, he still won votes in the South. Okay, I mean, Republicans, for the most part, had been pro-civil rights even during that time period, and they were still competitive in the South. Okay, they were competing in southern states. However, Nixon did lose the South. Okay, but Jimmy Carter came back in 1976. He's a Democrat, and he swept the South. He won the South. Okay, so again, I'm trying to figure out exactly how this Southern strategy flipped the South for Republicans when it took 30 or 40 years for the congressional South to actually be Republican, and you had Democrats winning the South even after Nixon. Okay, and I think it's debatable whether or not the Southern strategy actually caused the states to flip, okay, which is what they say. But that's not what this video is about, okay? I just want to say that what she's saying there is actually debatable, okay? Democrats want you to think that Republicans recruited racists, and that's what allowed Republicans to flip the South, which I don't think there's that much evidence to support that, but this is what they say.
Now, decades later, the right wing is reviving that same playbook, this time with Muslim Americans and trans people.
Let me chime in, though.
So again, I'm trying to figure out.
But guess what? Guess what she's going to present to prove her case, to prove this narrative and these allegations? Nothing. She's going to present nothing as proof. No evidence, no proof. And I'm just going to kill this whole argument in a few.
Exactly what she's saying here, okay? She's saying that the Muslims are bigots, okay? And the GOP is trying to use the bigotry of Muslims in order to get them to attack trans folks. Is that what she's saying? Who knows?
Sounds like it.
Hear me out here. The GOP is trying to recruit Muslim Americans, a community that makes up less than 2% of the U.S. population, against another tiny marginalized group of Americans, transgender people.
Okay, well, first of all, keyword was trying. Second of all, they don't have to try, Jen Psaki. See, this is what Jen Psaki doesn't realize. This is why she's dumber than a bag of bricks. If Christians are pushing back on transgenderism, I guarantee majority of Muslims will. Even if a minority of Christians are pushing back on transgenderism, I guarantee a majority of Muslims will. See, her problem is she's too busy hanging out with Ilhan Omar. Ilhan Omar ain't no real Muslim. She's a fake Muslim. She's a phony Muslim. Because if she was a real Muslim, Ilhan Omar would not be supporting transgenderism and homosexual and lesbians and things of that nature if she was a real Muslim. But she's a fake one. She's phony. She's phonier than a $2 bill. So there's that. You know, she's used to these fake, phony Muslims. I know real ones. One of my group members in my rap group, He's Muslim. His parents are Muslim. And I can tell you right now, man, they're not going for this transgenderism. They're not going to accept it. They're not going to agree with it. And they're not going to support it. And that's the thing. There's Christian churches that will support transgenderism and homosexuals and things of that nature because they're not real Christians anyways. They don't really, they're make-believe Christians. They're just part-time Christians. And that's the thing. Most Christians in America are not really full-time Christians. They're not Christians 7 days a week. And Christianity is just a part of their life. It's not their way of life. When it comes to most Muslims and Arabs, period, like Islam is not just a part of their life. It's their way of life. It is their whole life. This idea that Muslims are going to willingly let you indoctrinate their kids in American schools with transgenderism. Republicans ain't got to recruit them. This idea that they can't think for themselves, they can't speak for themselves, stand up for themselves, push back for themselves. That's what's racist. Jen Psaki is the racist because she's implying that Muslim people are not smart enough to think for themselves, to push back for themselves, to stand up for themselves. That she's applying like that they have to, somebody has to speak for them. They have to think for them, act for them, like Jen Psaki is the racist here. She's the complete racist. Common sense and common knowledge should tell you Islamic people, they're praying 2-3 times a day, fasting, Ramadan, all that stuff. Most Christians, even full-time Christians, aren't praying 2 to 3 times a day. Most Christians only pray when they need something. But this idea that yes, okay, yeah, are Republicans probably trying to get Muslims to join the fight with Christian conservatives against transgenderism? Yes. Why would they not? Why would they not? It's their fight too. That is a common denominator. I guarantee Christians and Muslims are on common grounds with fighting against transgenderism. At least real Christians, not fake ones or phony ones or make-believe ones. They're on common ground, probably with Jewish and Buddhist and Amish. There's going to be a lot of religions that are on common ground to stand up and push back against transgenderism, especially if you're trying to indoctrinate their kids in schools. Let's keep it moving.
It's important to remember that back in 2011, during the Republican primary, the right wing had designated Muslim Americans as public enemy number one. No surprise, given that conspiracy theorists, remember the birthers? I do. Had been trying for years to portray President Obama as a Trojan horse for Sharia law. Republican after Republican candidate ginned up fear about the fabricated threat.
Hey, he might not have been a Trojan horse for Sharia law, but he was a Trojan horse for wokeness, woke culture, for this virtue signaling and all this stuff that's dividing the country, that's more divisive than ever, So, yeah, more horse shit from her. And yes, after 9/11, there was a lot of people that started hating Arabs and Muslims and looked at Arabs and Muslims in the wrong way. I wasn't one of them, And yes, they probably were prejudiced or showed discrimination or racist towards Arabs and Muslims, after 9/11. There was a lot of people that hated. The fucking government themselves. See, they want to act like it was just Republicans that were out there pretty much questioning every single Arab, known to man that lived in America. They want to act like that was just Republicans saying, oh, yeah, we got to do this. No, it was the whole fucking government across the board that was being discriminative towards Arabs and whatnot. And I've never been one of those people that take the actions of a few and pawn it off as the actions of the many, I know that most Islamic people are good people. They're just very religiously devout, very devout in their religions. And these people that are terrorists are just using religion to fit their narrative and to benefit them in their fights. And that's the thing. Religion. You had the Crusades back in the days with the Templar Knights and things of that nature. Like this is Christianity and Islam has always been violent religions historically throughout the years. Just the thing now is you don't see Christians out here, Christian terrorists or Christian crusaders or Christians waging war on people anymore. Christianity has kind of went to a more peaceful state, but Islam is still part of Islam is still in a violent state. I mean, the Taliban runs the whole Afghanistan. But yeah, like and that's another thing to show you how serious that they take these things, that they're literally still at war with the Western civilization for things done in the past. They're having a religious war, a holy war, as they call it. So yeah, like this idea that people can't look at Muslims or Arabs differently when they're strapping bombs to kids and women, innocent women and kids to blow themselves up and stuff. Like, yeah, that's some different shit. That's kamikazes were flying planes into boats and ships, but those are actual soldiers. Like Islam has turned actual non-soldiers into soldiers and made them martyrs and strapped bombs to them. This idea that people can't look at Islamic people differently or Muslim people a little differently because of 9/11, and it's really hypocritical. It's like Islam and Muslim people, there's a lot of them that hate Western civilization because of what Western civilization has done to their countries in the past. And as soon as they do it to us, it's like, oh, we have to just accept it. We can't be mad at them, or we can't hate them or dislike them after they attack us. That's really kind of hypocritical and double standard. And that's the problem with these Democrats. That's why I call them the double standard Dems. Every argument that they have is based off of a hypocritical double standard.
Posed by an Islamic legal doctrine debated by scholars for centuries. To them, the imaginary prospect of Sharia law in this country was scarier than gun violence, climate change, and more important to discuss than, say, millions of people who didn't have health care.
Okay, once again, let me chime on. See, this is where they feed you so much horseshit. Guns don't kill people. Guns don't kill people. People kill people. It was just as violent in society when people just had knives and swords and bow and arrows and things of that nature. I would argue it was far more violent and far more conquering going on in society before we got guns. I would argue there's less conquering going on in society, less of pillaging, ravaging, and raping in society since we've gotten guns. Climate change. Well, they always argue climate change, but the problem is with that climate change argument is everybody in the world isn't trying to go along with their climate change agenda. Like, all this is just talk. It's just loose lips. It's just all talk. That's all it is. Because they know as good as well as anybody, if other countries like South Korea, Vietnam, China, and communist countries don't follow this climate change agenda out here, it won't never work. It's only a half measure, as we call it, a half measure. Like, can we have solutions that will actually work? Can we actually have solutions that the whole world will actually join into? Climate change will never work because everybody doesn't care about America's climate change, UK and these other countries' climate change agenda. Yes, the world is getting hot as hell. But I would argue that the world has always been in a climate change. What the fuck do you think an ice age was, you jackass, you idiots, you morons? We didn't have hairspray cans and cars and jets and planes when we went through an ice age, did we? No. I would argue society in the world has always been going through climate changes that we can't control. Yes, we might have some effect over them, but this idea that we could just reverse climate or we can control climate, any of those two, is horseshit and bullshit. And let her hear this rant of, like, you saying that Republicans were attacking Muslims at one time. This argument, it doesn't even mean shit. It doesn't mean shit if now that there's an issue out there that both conservative Christians and Muslims both agree with, that they don't want happening, like indoctrinating their kids in schools or transgenderism. It doesn't matter if they've had a rough history, if conservative Christians attacked Muslims in the past. This is something that will unify them. It doesn't matter. Like the how Christians used to think about Muslims doesn't matter if, there's an agenda that they both agree with. You know what this is? This is what they say is the enemy of my enemy is my friend. That's what this has come to. So this doesn't mean shit.
I do not believe in Sharia law in American courts. I believe in American laws in American courts.
If we think that there is an undermining now, just wait.
You know what? Before I get into the rest of the fact that Jen Psaki would use this just goes to show you that she agreed with Sharia law in America. That's all she's saying, that she supported and agreed with it. So this is really a terrible example. Terrible example.
If Sharia is adopted or utilized by justices in the United States.
Accepting Sharia in the United States would be the end of our civilization as we know it. No jurisdiction will tolerate having Sharia imposed in the United States of America.
Now, here's the thing, right? I guess you could ask the question of, was that actually really needed, right? Was that type of rhetoric needed? I guess you could debate that.
I could get that. Okay.
What they said was a fact, right? What they said was true.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. We don't want Sharia law.
We don't want it.
I'm not sure what's so controversial about saying that.
Yeah.
But I tend to believe that and
the fact that Jen Psaki would use this just goes to show you that she probably think that we should have had it in America. That we should have Sharia law in America. So, yeah, I don't get why this has anything to do with it.
A time period in which, justifiably so, considering what happened with 9/11.
Thank you.
You did have Americans who, were skeptical of Islam and, what Muslims actually believe. So I get it, right? I understand why people have questions about that potentially being imported into this country, especially consider how, we're taking in refugees and stuff like that from these countries. Yeah, I think it's legitimate to ask these questions.
I don't think I need to hear anymore. Basically, what she's saying is, hey, we can attack countries and they can hate us. When they attack us, we have to love them. We have to love them for it. Once again, double standards. I don't get why showing up conservatives saying that we don't want Sharia law or has anything to do with the fact that conservative Christians and Muslims both agree that they don't want their kids being indoctrinated with transgenderism. I don't think, she's going out on a limb here, because I predicted this before it happened. When I seen the video, I reacted to a video of Muslims and Christians at a school protesting. I predicted beforehand that Muslims will push back on this far more than Christians, because they're Muslims 7 days a week. They pray 2-3 times a day. They fast. They do all this stuff. It's their way of life. It's not just part of their life. It's their way of life. Most Christians is just a small part of their life. Small part of their life. A lot of Christians on Sundays. According to my neighbor, though, it's Wednesdays and Sundays now, because they meet on Wednesdays, 2 days a week. Even people that I know that are Muslim and they're criminals, or they break laws and stuff, they still pray 2-3 times a day. They still fast. They're still more devout than most Christians. And that's, like I said, if a small portion of Christians are going to push back on transgenderism, you guarantee a large scale of Muslims are going to push back. I would argue that every real Muslim is going to push back on you teaching transgenderism to their kid in school. And you had the Muslim kid up in Canada skipping school. More power to them. And that doesn't shock me. I could have predicted that. Like this, that's the thing. This is why it's such horseshit. It's such horseshit. It's because Republicans don't have to recruit Muslims on this issue. They don't have to recruit. Muslims are going to stand up on this issue themselves. They're going to get out there and protest on this issue themselves. Muslims are going to agree with this issue across the board themselves. It's just so racist how people just assume people of color can't think for themselves. It's like another video I'm going to react to with you see all these white college kids reacting to transgenderism. Then you got all these people in the hood that look like, you would think these people in the hood are uneducated, probably don't have common sense. But you look at all the people in the hood on this video, and they got all the common sense in the world. And all these white kids going to college have how much common sense? Zero. That's why college is so overrated to me. College is started this indoctrination of transgenderism and LGBTQ community movement and whatnot. This man can become a woman and woman become a man, identity politics, gender identity politics, all this stuff, racial identity politics, whatever it may be. And that's the thing. Now that if you can identify as whatever gender you want to identify, then you can identify as whatever race you want to identify as. A lot of people tell me I'm just cracker coded, I'm a cracker coded N-word. That's what I've had a lot of my friends tell me. Friends that tell me my soul is melanin. I'm just cracker coded. The outside of me is white and the inside is black. A lot of my friends have told me that. I rap, I make hip hop music, promote hip hop music. I've dated a lot of black women in my life. The majority of my friends are black. 99.9% of my friends are black. I got one white friend, at most, one. And I rarely talk to him because he just, he doesn't really fit with my circle. He doesn't really fit with my circle whatsoever. But I don't need to hear more about this. I predicted it long before it would happen. I predicted that if Christians are pushing back on this transgenderism and people out here attacking Christians the way they are, because they're attacking Christians heavy, that Muslims are going to join this fight too. Because once you start indoctrinating kids in school, there is Muslim kids going to school as well too. And I can tell you right now, Muslim parents and Muslim kids are probably not going to be allowing you to indoctrinate them in school whatsoever. So this idea that Republicans would even need to recruit Muslims to push back on transgenderism is complete horseshit, complete bullshit, some imaginary made up make believe false narrative. This idea, and it's a racist view and stance to take, because all you're doing is saying that Arabs and Muslims and Black Americans that are Muslims, that they can't think for themselves, that they're not free thinkers, that they're not some of the most free thinking people compared to Christians. So yeah, it's bullshit. It's such a false narrative. Like I said, it's the enemy of my enemy is my friend. That's what's going on here. And I would argue that this is going to probably bring even more Christians and Muslims to the forefront together to protest together against transgenderism. Another thing that transgenderism is a complete contradiction of, and they're actually supported by they're actually support transgenderism, is feminism. Feminism and transgenderism are complete contradictions of one another. But feminists are supporting transgenderism more than anybody. Feminists support this transgender shit more than anybody. They're to blame for it more than anybody. That's why I don't feel sorry for women getting dominated in sports. They got what they asked for. They wanted this. Feminist movement always tries to attach themselves to every other movement. They try to attach themselves to civil rights movement. And they did. They let civil rights convince themselves that feminism and civil rights movement are the same thing. They're apples and oranges. Then they've let themselves be convinced that transgenderism and feminist movement are fighting for the same thing. No, they're not. It's a complete contradiction to one another. Feminist movement has done this to themselves because they always try to attach their movement to other movements and try to convince that movement and themselves that they're fighting for the same thing, and it's the same movement when it's not. So yeah, it's feminists' fault for they should have just, not convinced themselves that they're fighting for the same thing when they won't. They're fighting for apples and oranges, so they should let civil rights go fight for the apples and they go fight for the oranges, feminists. But you didn't do that. You wanted to convince one group that's fight for apples, other groups fight for oranges, that we're both fighting for the same thing. No, one's fight for apples, one's fight for oranges. And now y'all both fight for apples and oranges. And they contradict each other. Transgenderism, feminism, civil rights movement, feminism, And I was talking to a friend the other day. We were talking about, have you ever went to a restaurant or a bathroom, or you ever seen a water faucet that said heterosexuals only? No, you haven't. That's why this idea that transgenders rights, it's such bullshit. It's such horseshit. Yes, there was a time when we seen whites only at restaurants and bars and bathrooms and water faucets, but you never seen it say heterosexual only. That's how you know this gay rights movement and transgender rights movement is completely bogus. The narrative is so false. It's such horseshit and bullshit. You never went to a restaurant that said heterosexuals only. It's all bullshit, man. It's so made up. Once again, I want to thank you all for tuning in. Paul Pickett Podcast. And I am out.